with Assad's regime's gone, Tucker doesn't know what's wrong with Assad. As Candace does, he's just asking questions. He doesn't know what really is wrong with Assad. I mean, he protected Christians, so that's all we care about. So basically, welcome to today's episode of the Daily Objective. Joining me today is James Valliant. There is this clip of Tucker Carlson from one of his recent interviews, one of the recent Tucker shows he did. And there is this clip. It's a 1 minute clip, yet there is so much stuff in there which shows straight up basically evil nature of Tucker that I think there is more than enough in that 1 minute that well, for one, I split it into two parts because it's so bad, and also yeah, there's just so much to comment on that I'm not sure even a full or half an hour of the Daily Objective, which is the full show, will be enough to really go through that. But James, we'll go to the clip probably straight away, but do you have anything to say about Tucker beforehand?
Well, for many, many years now, I've known that Tucker Carlson was a man who lacked any kind of mental responsibility about what the things he believes or says he believes, and he is truly a man who lacks entirely moral compass. Anyone who would go to Tucker Carlson and think you're going to get anything like humane moral values, pro-life human values, you're wrong. The man is a defender of dictatorship, violence, atrocity, as we will shortly hear. So let's get on with the disgusting comments that Mr. Carlson has to make about this vile dictator.
Yeah, I mean, he's very happy to provide platform to many evil people. I mean, he provided an interview to Putin. He had a recent interview with Lavrov, which is a Russian diplomat and the foreign minister. We haven't even covered that, but it's another. He basically invites people to straight up like spread propaganda. It is literally like inviting Hitler, or rather. Some other like Nazi official. And okay, what do you think about the Polish people?
Well, yeah, let's
Yeah.
get Rudolf Hess in here to talk about the goals of the Nazi government and the Third Reich. What the hell? No, he is an outright defender of dictatorship. In the case of Putin, it's really ugly. It's truly ugly. He's a classic defender of Russian dictatorship, like those who were mouthing defenses of communism in the days of yore. There's no doubt about it. And he will get the worst, he will sanction the worst kind of guests in defending these dictatorships. No, he is pro human torture and suffering and for aggressive dictatorships. Yeah, there's no other way of looking at it.
And someone is asking in the chat, did Assad protect Christians? So that's going to be in the second clip, and we'll talk about that. But let's listen to the first part.
What I didn't understand and still don't understand is why we're all required to hate Assad. I'm not just speaking for myself. I don't have strong feelings about Assad one way or the other. Apparently, he's protected the Christians, so I'm grateful for that as a Christian. But why am I required to hate Assad? Tulsi Gabbard went and met with Assad. She's been attacked ever since. Has anyone ever explained why Americans should hate Assad?
All right. So that was about 24 seconds, and I have about 5 things that I took out from that. So I'll just mention the first one, and then I'll go to you, James. So the first one, why are we required to hate Assad, was the first statement he had. And it's I mentioned it on yesterday's episode of the reality show. I'm not sure, James, if you've listened, but there is this clip of Mike Tyson when he was asked, who are you voting for? And he said, I'm voting for Donald Trump. What are you going to do about it? And the other guy said, well, I might disagree. And Mike Tyson is like, so what? So what if you disagree? And it's this shut down your mind mentality. Why should I hate Assad? Whoa. Why should I hate? Why should I think about it? Why am I required to like hate Assad? Like it's this complete rejection of any curiosity, of any like reason, of any like wanting to comprehend situation. Like it's like real.
Emotional terms, hate, and he puts it in forced terms. Why am I? Do I have to? no one has a gun to his head, and no one is. It's not a question of emotions. It's a question of the evaluations that underlie the appropriate emotion for a monster like Assad. And if he look, does he deny that Assad was a dictator? I'm sorry, every dictator is worthy of moral condemnation and the emotional results of that. But I'm not going to focus on the emotional results of that. I'm going to focus on the rational evaluation that dictators are evil people oppressing their own populations. And in the case of Assad, we have so much oppression, especially in the last 10 years or so since we've had the Syrian civil war. But we've been talking about under Bashar al-Assad and his father for the last 50 years doing incredible things, horrific things that are hard to even believe, the use of chemical weapons against their own population, the systematic way in which the Muslim group that does not support him have been raped, tortured, disappeared in prison. They're focused on children. It's horrific. Since the civil war began, just since 2014, let's just take the last 10 years, the estimates have been that 150,000 innocent civilians have disappeared, and the reports are that they've been tortured, raped, treated horrifically. Now that we're got people on the scene, there are international observers who've seen mass graves that support the fact that at least 100,000 civilians have been slaughtered just in the last 10 years. Now, this guy's also been the funnel for Russian and Iranian interests in the entire region. How do you suppose Hezbollah has got all those missiles that they fired into Israel, for example? No. And is Syria a wonderful place? Is it a wonderful place for Christians to live? Why doesn't Tucker go move there? Didn't he go move there? Now that it's up in the air, maybe in doubt about whether it's the vacation spot of the Middle East or not. But it was a horrific dictatorship where there were no freedom of speech. There was no freedoms. I mean, Tucker Carlson is saying, why should I hate dictators? Okay, that man is evil. That man is blind.
And imagine applying that principle to anything else. Well, why should I be required to believe that grass is green, or that if I jump off the building, that the gravitational force might kill me? Like, what is this complete rejection of any values, any sort of standards, any sort of way to like judge things? I mean, it's this similar, and this is why I hate. And now people can take me out of context, but this is why I hate a lot of like advocates for free speech, because oftentimes what they do instead, usually coming from the conservative side, is like free speech just mean I should be allowed to say whatever I want, and people should accept it. People should accept it that this is what I say, sort of. And when you challenge them, the sort of argument is like, well, can I not say what I think? No, but I will not allow, you have a right of free speech. And again, only when it comes to government censorship, not me providing you a platform to say it. But then it's like, yeah, I will fight you on everything you say. You have a right to speak, but I will fight you if you spread propaganda, if you spread in this case, like dictator apology almost. In Candace's case, when you spread like anti-Semitic statements, yeah, I will cover you. I will cover you. I will talk about you. I will speak about you.
Notice the hatred of Western values, the blindness to anything that was good about America. Tucker Carlson has betrayed every value America stands for. If he can't see the difference between Assad or something negative to evaluate at all, why should I hate Assad? Well, if you can't find something seriously wrong with Assad's regime, with his dictatorship, then you are no defender of freedom, rights, America. You are anti-American. You are hostile to freedom. You are hostile to human well-being and human life on Earth. And further, he injects into it total religious bigotry. It doesn't matter to him what might have happened to Sunnis. It doesn't matter to him what might have happened to Druze. It doesn't matter to him what might have happened to Jewish people. No. So long as this group of Christians are being protected, what? So if Assad goes out of his way to protect your sectarian religious group, that's okay. He can torture and kill and rape tens of thousands of people of other ethnic and religious groups. That is utterly disgusting, and it comes from a totally sectarian religious perspective that is medieval. He hates American values. He's an opponent of free religion. He's an opponent of religious tolerance. Now, as to your point, absolutely, he has a freedom to spew his vile, hate-filled, human, anti-human propaganda. We have a right to disagree with it. No one has a right to give him a platform. But I would just remind everyone that the Republican Party of the United States of America had him as an invited guest at their political convention this last summer.
Yeah, just quickly, because platforms have a right to give him platform, they don't have an obligation. Just
an obligation.
I think you
That's what I
misspoke.
mean. Of course. If Candace wants to spread his vile lies, she's just the sort of person who would do so. If Fox News wants to spread his vile lies, he got fired from them. But if the Republican Party wants to spread his vile lies, now that tells me something about the Republican Party today, that they would even have a monster like Tucker Carlson at the Republican convention. It should hang around the GOP's neck as shame. Shame. Trump ought to be ashamed of himself for having Tucker Carlson there, an overt defender of dictatorship, a sectarian bigot, a man indifferent to the death of over 100,000 civilians. It's vile.
Yeah, and when he says I don't have a strong feelings about him one way or the other, I mean this should like ring alarm bells in your This is someone who has been a political commentator. I'm not sure if he ever was like a actual journalist or basically just a sort of media personality.
But an opinion blowhard.
Yeah, but it's still that's someone who should know about stuff. Like this civil war has been, as you said, going a decade at least, and maybe a bit more, depending on where you started. He must have talked about it in the past. It was a big deal in America, especially during the height of ISIS. It was like on the news pretty much every day, and he doesn't know. He doesn't know who Assad is. He doesn't know. Like he has no opinion. Like this is not some a random conflict like somewhere in like small African country that okay, it's a bit more complicated and we don't know much about it. It's like it's a Syrian civil war. It was all over the news for a few years. The migrant crisis, the rise of ISIS. Now with the fall of Assad, he still doesn't know. This is not just he at the end he asks, and I want to go to the second clip. In the end, he asks, "Did anyone explain why you should hate Assad?" I mean, what kind of statement is that? This is not ignorance. This is not
no.
Assad. Never heard of the guy.
Anyone who, of course, makes public their opinion, as we do here, has a responsibility, a moral responsibility to know the facts and know what the hell they're talking about. And I cannot say that he doesn't. He knows. He knows perfectly well that Assad allowed the use of chemical weapons against his own population. He knows perfectly well the atrocities of the Syrian civil war in recent years. Of course he does. He knows that millions of Syrians have fled various ethnic and religious groups have fled Syria in recent years. He knows that millions of civilians have fled. He knows that tens of thousands, he has to know, were tortured and killed. He has to know. He has to, and just back up and look at his defense of Russia in this as well. See, Syria was, working hand in hand with Russia, and Syria provides Russia the only naval base they have on the Mediterranean outside of the northern Black Sea. He is happy to support dictators, people who are in league with dictators, who give the dictators some military advantage. So, no, you don't have to hate evil, Tucker, but I can negatively evaluate you for your ghastly defense of dictatorship.
Well, I'd fight you a bit on that. I think you do have a requirement to hate on evil. I think there is a certain amount of basically moral require, not the duty.
What do you mean require?
Not the duty, moral sort of.
I'm not going to put a gun to his head. I can't force an emotion from him. On the other hand, if he's a decent human being, he has to. He is required, if he wants to be this side of sane and decent. Yeah, in that sense, he's required to. Required to have an ounce of my respect as a human being. Yeah.
And So we have a few super chat first. Thank you, Bonnie, so much for your super sticker. Thank you, Robert, for your super chat. He says, to Tucker Carlson, condemnation of Assad is condemnation of Tucker because Tucker admires strong men, including or especially dictators. Yeah, I think this idealization of dictators has been becoming stronger over the probably last few years. This this strong, well, Putin is a strong man. He's he rules his country strongly, and it is really disgusting because it's admiration of actual dictators instead of, and on the other side they say, well, this president, Biden and Obama are just too weak. Well, whatever you think about any of the past presidents, past American presidents, they were democratically elected. To large extent, they defended the Constitution. They didn't they didn't try to like take over the nation by force. They had respect. They had a certain amount of respect for the principles of the American system, for the principles of Western powers. This is not something you just say, oh, Putin is better because he's a stronger man.
Look at the way Trump seems to admire dictators. Look at the compliments that Mr. Trump for years now has delivered. Oh, he's someone I like, someone I respect. The love letters he'll exchange with dictators. It's just despicable. And that lack of moral compass, just a total lack of moral compass, as if, it's the same kind of mentality behind the UN itself. Trump can say he's a critic of the UN, but he's got the same kind of neutral mentality. And in Tucker's case, it's particularly overt and vile. So long as America is at peace, we don't care if the world goes under to dictatorship. Now, of course, that's not even true about American interests and world peace. Dictatorship is the cause of war. To let aggressive dictators fester is going to inevitably mean a threat to every civilized nation on this planet. But look at the way they look at it. Consider the way they look at it. I mean, my God. Okay, well, let's negotiate with any dictator, no matter how horrific. Let's get peace, no matter what.
Yeah, and again, this is like Tucker Carlson, or when Donald Trump talks about negotiating with dictators. These people are not like my grandma who like, oh, she doesn't care what's going on in Syria. These are in one case the most powerful person in the world, the leader or the head of state of the greatest country in the world, of the most powerful country in the world, and he doesn't have an opinion or something. Or in Tucker's case, one of the probably currently as a single individual, one of the most influential people, at least on a certain parts of the right when it comes to sort of like public opinion, and he doesn't know, he doesn't care to like learn about Assad. It's clearly not that.
Oh, he knows. He knows more than 100,000 civilians, maybe 150,000 civilians just in recent years are going to be found in mass graves in Syria. He knows perfectly well that chemical weapons were used. He knows that torture and rape were used. No, I don't give him the credit of ignorance. No, he's a defender of dictatorship. He doesn't know any reason why to negatively evaluate a dictator like Assad. That tells me everything I need to know about that entity called Tucker Carlson.
We also have a super chat from Alex. Thank you so much. Sorry, I can hear myself twice. We have a super chat from Alex. Thank you so much. She says, he protected Christians is like saying, how could Hitler be bad? Why should I hate him? He was a vegetarian and loved his dog. And yeah, I had the analogy like this. He protected Christians. It is like an actual fascist propaganda. It is like he made trains run on time. He built he built highways. It is like you can read about it. It's like an actual like fascist propaganda. It's from the fascist handbook straight up. Like you just take one thing, and when it comes to did he protect Christians or not, it's literally, it doesn't matter. No matter which way you go, it doesn't absolute him or sort of protect him or sort of put like he was an evil person, and it doesn't put an asterisk there, but he protected Christians. It doesn't work like that. Like study of history doesn't work like that. And people do it on the other side. They look at founding fathers and they say they own slaves, and that's like the end. Or, a QED, we're no longer talking about it. It's the same kind of mentality. It's a refusal to actually analyze, historical figures, or in this case, like an actual figures that are actually living contextually and properly, and put them, properly analyze them. It's just, well, this one thing, but that's good for me.
Precisely. I mean, look at the way he defends Putin. Putin will kill his enemies, both inside his country and outside his country, whether in politics or in journalism or in business. People will disappear to some Siberian labor camp. He will start an aggressive war against a neighboring country, as he did when he invaded both Crimea 10 years ago and Ukraine just a few years ago. Mainland Ukraine. So no, he'll defend aggressive. Now, what's the cool thing about Putin? Well, look at that subway system in Moscow. They've got a cool subway system there, Daniel. Oh, and besides, Putin now is letting the Russian Orthodox Church do its thing. And as a Christian, gosh, can I find anything wrong with Putin? Because after all, he's letting the Russian Orthodox Church come back. Those mean commies. The only thing wrong with them is that they suppressed Christianity. What? The only thing wrong with the communists is that they suppressed Christianity? No, that shows his ethnic partisan bias, his own fascist, nationalist, racist tendencies. No, the fact that Assad protected Christians for a certain period and for certain political reasons does not absolve him, as you point out, of all the other atrocities and vile deeds that he did. It's absolutely insane.
But let's listen to the second part of the clip. We'll also hear from the guest. I didn't even bother finding out who it was. I literally don't care. But let's listen to a bit from him. Don't care as in like anybody who Tucker invites and is willing to accept Tucker's invitation is like done in my book.
Because every regime change operation we ever do, we have to make sure that the opponent is the worst villain since Hitler or Hitler reincarnate.
Some ophthalmologist from London is a bloodthirsty dictator. I didn't really.
We have to say this, and this is part of the psyops or the info war that goes along with regime change operations. This is completely typical. And we're told if we don't stop him now, it's only going to spread. And
he'll be in Des Moines.
Exactly.
Okay, so that was actually Jeffrey Sachs. Actually, no. But I'll just start with this. I mean, or you need to hear, and Alex in the chat is yelling it, ophthalmologist from London. It's just some artist from Vienna.
Yeah, exactly. Hitler was just a painter from Vienna.
It's just some teacher from Rome. It's just some priest from Gori. It's just some peasant from Shawshank.
That's a priest from seminary student Joseph Stalin. That's it, right. That's exactly what it's saying. That is precisely what Tucker is saying. And look at his guest, who wouldn't know a dictatorship if it bit him on the rear end. When America calls for regime change, it's pretty reluctantly, and it's whether America's been involved in wars. I don't think it should have taken on. Vietnam comes to mind. The 20 years we spent in Afghanistan, which was pure self-sacrifice, but nonetheless, the governments that ran those countries were evil. Iraq, even when we took them out, I thought that was the wrong war at the wrong time, fought the wrong way. But nonetheless, Saddam Hussein was a murderous dictator. When no dictatorship on earth has any legitimacy, it may be properly, morally overthrown by any other government on earth. They lack all legitimacy. America can take them out tomorrow if it is in their interest. Now, as I say, there's a separate question as to whether or not America should, whether it is in the interest of Western governments to do so. Those are totally separate questions. But on the other hand, regime change, when America has called for regime change or has tried regime change, it has been against despicable dictatorships of various kinds. Islamist, communist, Nazi. What, he likes dictators? I don't get it.
Yeah, and again,
it's all demonization, psyops, to call a dictator.
Yeah, and again, it shows. Again, it doesn't show ignorance. It shows the evil nature of Tucker at this point. Because again, he was just a ophthalmologist from London. Why was he studying in London? It's because he wasn't supposed to at first inherit the throne or the presidency. Sorry, of Syria. It was supposed to be his older brother, who I believe either died or something happened to him.
Yeah,
So
brother, it was
yeah,
injured.
so Bashar al-Assad came back to Syria and just took it. But yeah, he went into London first because he thought he wouldn't be inheriting, no, inheriting. He wouldn't be the president, but it just happened. The circumstances made it so, and he gladly accepted it. It's not like, oh, I really, I really don't want to do that. I really don't want to be an evil
Oh,
dictator.
he was a reluctant George Washington, right? My my God, Tucker, how blind can you be? And he did inherit the dictatorship from his dictator dad. I mean, we're talking about a dictatorship that engages in religious discrimination, even if Tucker's own religion he feels is protected there. It makes it all the more vile. It makes it all the more vile. So long as, my group was protected for a time by Assad, well, to hell with everybody else. To hell with the Druze, the Jews, the Sunnis, let Iran funnel weapons into Hezbollah to attack Israel. So think about that too. He doesn't care one little bit if the road between Tehran and Hezbollah in Lebanon went right through Syria. No, he has to go to, Des Moines, Iowa will be invaded. So it shows you how much he cares about Israel. The one rights respecting or even somewhat rights respecting nation in that entire region, he wouldn't care if it disappeared tomorrow. So the aggression that Syria supported that helped Hezbollah do its aggression is completely invisible to him. He hates Israel. I can only imagine that he's got some kind of wacky Jew hatred like Candace Owen does. It's disgusting. It's a kind of racism. It really is. It's equivalent, let's put it that way, to a kind of racism when he says, heck, Christians were protected by Assad. And the bizarre exaggeration in the way he puts it, it tells you everything. So you don't care if the only civilized country in the Middle East gets attacked with weapons that were funneled through this dictator's country, through this dictator who slaughtered tens of thousands of his own people just in recent years. It is simply evil. It is simply evil. This is irresponsible public discourse. And
Jeffrey Sachs talks about we need a regime change and vilify, and I wish American government was acting as like these like crazy conservatives think American government in the same way. Like I wish democratic presidents were as the far left views them as like these like warmongers who are like Obama is just like bombing all of Middle East because because he's crazy or something. Like I wish these people like American government was as like these kind of people like view them. It is the most like at all times it is always the most reluctant way like to do anything really, and also this idea of regime change, and you can argue about some of the American wars about whether properly or not, but it's not like we've ever attacked like Great Britain because we didn't like the prime minister they elected. Like any nation that America invaded were like evil dictatorships, antithetical to the Western way of life, antithetical to the Western sort of style of governments, to the Western values. Why would you ever like you could say they were wrong, but why would you ever defend them? Why would you ever defend any of these? Like for example, Ayn Rand I think argued against American intervention in Europe during the Second World War before Pearl Harbor, basically. But it's not like she was saying, "Well, what's wrong with Hitler?" No, she like called him evil. She just said there is no basically the way the governments has responsibility towards the citizens. There is no obligation yet to basically intervene at this point in a foreign war.
Well, you look at Ayn Rand was ahead of the curve, ahead of all those leftists on Hitler and the Nazis, by the way. Just read her book Anthem, and it's obvious that much of her critique from the 1930s, even in its original version, read it. She attacks racism and eugenics, and she attacks distinctly Hitlerian ideas. Check out her correspondence in the 1930s. And of course, the fear that she had we would sanction Stalin and the communists came true, didn't it? So in her view, both Hitler and Stalin were totally evil. And she understood that before the war. No, she never defended dictatorship, quite the opposite. She attacked dictatorship. And if Mr. Tucker Carlson can't see the difference between Great Britain and America and Canada, and even with Trudeau, Mr. Carlson, if you can't see the difference between Western governments and dictatorships, Mr. Carlson, well, people like that sometimes don't understand it unless it bites them, unless it gets them. And, is advocacy of this actually supporting dictatorship? Yeah, it is. So to some extent, does Tucker Carlson kind of deserve to learn the difference on his own hide? Yeah, he does. Unfortunately, I don't think circumstances will give him or us the opportunity for him to learn what evil against other human beings he is promoting and advocating. But that is what he is doing.
Yeah, and just quickly, someone in the chat is asking, what was it specifically? Can I ask a question? Why should he care about Israel? And they also add, how about some people don't think we need to be married together or there needs to be marriage? Why should we? So when it comes to this, I think, we as objectivists need to be, I think, much more judgmental. I think it shouldn't be acceptable, of course, no force of government, anything, but it shouldn't be acceptable to say like, what's wrong with Assad, or basically, you could, to some extent, I can accept ignorance. Basically, I don't really care about geopolitics. I just don't have much to say. To some extent, I can understand it. But like claiming this kind of like really like that is a word, omnivalent, something like that. Basically, that you don't really care either way. Ambivalence, yeah.
Mixed feelings.
Yeah, that this should really not be accepted, and people should be called out for it. It shouldn't be accepted to say, well, what's different from these dictators and like Western elected leaders. It really shouldn't be like an accept. And I think we really need to like push back against like any sort of like moral relativism, any sort of like relativism when it comes to like judging geopolitical leaders. And just quickly about specifically why should someone care about Israel? I think it's in a similar way. If you are someone, and now I'll do it broadly as someone living in the West, or no, someone living across the world that has Western values, meaning values of individual rights, values of property rights, values of some sort of democratic participation, like some sort of democratic process, some respect for reason. If you have any of those, you should support Israel, because Israel is what represents that in the Middle East. And the people fighting against Israel are the ones who not only support the opposite, but also only at the moment, the reason why they attack Israel is because that's the closest one. But many of these, Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, Houthis, any chance they get, they attack Western powers. Iran taking over the American embassy, Houthis attacking international shipping, Hezbollah attacking the American base. Especially if you're an American, these are your enemies, and Israel is your ally. You should care if you care for your life, if you care for values you hold.
Israel is fighting the war for America and Europe right now. If these Islamist monsters were not occupied by the civilized and and competent Israelis, you think they would be at peace with civilization? No. We all in that semi-civilized world, and I have to call it the semi-civilized world, but we, the last bastion of civilization, we have to recognize Israel is fighting our war. They are the frontier of civilization. They are the frontier of civilization. Is America flawed? Yes. Is Israel flawed? Yes. But the point is, if you can't see the qualitative difference between Israel and America and Assad and Iran, then I question your moral compass. you're not a person who understands right and wrong, good or evil. And if you don't have an opinion, if you're ill-informed and you say, I don't know and I don't care, that's one thing. If you take to a microphone and publicly advocate a position, as Tucker Carlson does, you have a moral responsibility to be morally responsible. If that's what you mean by required, yeah, then I agree. He's required, if he wants to be thought of as a decent human being, to more negatively sanction dictators. And the Assad regime was one of the most murderous, brutal dictatorships on earth until just recently. It is despicable.
If people are interested in the full interview, I don't know why you would be, but I'll put it in the chat, as well as James had an article about the recently revealed mass graves in Syria, so you can learn more about that too. And just quickly, someone says that's fine, but could that be happening in Africa too? So sort of like a similar thing. Well, for the most part, if there is, I'm sort of I am trying to like look around the world and see what's happening, and I don't see like a similar thing in a sense. For example, I'll compare it to Ukraine, and the reason why we talk about Ukraine and Russia less than, let's say, Israel and Hamas. The biggest problem is what is the sort of general narrative that's out there in the world. No one reasonable. Or sort of, it's not an acceptable thing to say that Russia is the good guy here, or to say that Russians are doing something good. It is generally in the West, it's Ukrainians are the ones that have been attacked, and they are fighting. And there is I think there is still some evil going on in the fact that Ukraine is not allowed to defend itself fully, and that's really bad, and we talk about it whenever that happens. But with Israel is specifically targeted, even in the West, that it cannot defend itself, despite the fact that it's freer, despite the fact that it's been attacked, despite the fact that it's the moral thing to do. It is attacked at all points. Just think about every time America tries to stop Israel from actually defending itself, either attacking Iran or attacking Hezbollah, at every point having to have a ceasefire. And this is something that I think is truly, for one thing, we are unique about. No one says what we say. And I think it's a real gap in the sort of Western media that no one has, even the pro-Israeli people don't have the moral confidence to really defend Israel. And that's why I think it's really unique, Israel and Hamas. Because even, let's say, if there was some, I think like you could say like something like Botswana is like a freer country. If there was like and there are a bunch of like military dictatorships in Africa. So if a military dictatorship attacked, the sort of like a freer, we would defend it. But no one would say to that freer African country that no, don't defend yourself. You wouldn't see the similar enough problem.
There are dictatorships in Africa, but is there a dictatorship in Africa of the scale of Russia or Iran, and as aggressive in their region, trying to take over countries next to them and in the region in such a successful way? For example, if there was a country...
And just quickly, and are there people in the West defending those dictatorships in the same way people in the West are defending Hamas?
Precisely. Or would we react if African nation defended itself, properly defended itself, and went after the enemy and didn't feed the enemy and wanted to actually destroy the enemy and their capacity to attack them? Would we criticize Israel in the same way? No, the same way we criticize Israel. Attack them the same way we criticize Israel? Of course not. Of course not. No, there are huge differences there. When you look at the world today, the really horrific dictatorships that are aggressive are places like Iran and Russia. Look at what they're doing. Russia has just invaded a major neighbor of theirs. Iran has been supplying the Hezbollah, the Houthis, Hamas with weapons. They are aggressive dictators. And aggressive dictatorship must be dealt with. It's a threat to every civilized country on earth. Going through this.
And in the way that Russia is viewed clearly as like a aggressive thing that has to be dealt with, dealt with. People don't view Hamas or even Iran in the same way. When Israel wanted to attack Iran for Iran attacking Israel, America said, but don't attack the oil fields, don't attack the nuclear sites. So I think this is like a real difference why the Israeli situation is unique and really has to be and has to be talked about, because it's such a clear example of like evil and sort of evasion of recognition of what Hamas and the Palestinian people are standing for.
Right. Europeans who can see clearly that Russia is the aggressor in Ukraine have an entirely different standard, usually, when it comes to Israel. And that is disgusting. And underlying it is anti-Semitism and the other things that we've discussed on this channel. Israel is a unique case. Israel and Israel alone has all these ridiculous standards placed on it. And it's because, in my view, ultimately, it's because Israel is the frontier of civilization in a pretty savage area.
So we went much longer than I wanted to, as I said. It was only 1 minute video, but there was so much fundamentally wrong with it that I think it really had to be talked about. But we will continue on the reality show where we'll be talking about something similar, how to deal with terrorists. Now with HTS in Syria sort of willing to cooperate with Israel, a potential ceasefire with Hamas, the ceasefire that happened with Lebanon. So we'll talk about a bunch of those. The link to the reality show is in the chat, so you can follow us there, and we'll be going live in just a bit or so. James, any last words?
No, I agree with you. It was important to point this out. This is a clear-cut moral case. And Tucker Carlson has absolutely no moral compass. He is a morally reprehensible human being. And that's really all I have to say about him.
And with that, make sure to watch us on the reality show in just about a minute or so. Thank you, James, for joining me today. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and see you in a bit.
Be safe.